Should Joe Rogan sue CNN? Yes. Joe should also sue tons of other outlets that published lies claiming that he was ingesting horse dewormer. Because there's a big difference between horse dewormer and medication prescribed by your doctor. But of course, I'm sure you heard the news that this past week or so, Joe Rogan announced he had COVID and that he was throwing the kitchen sink at it. He was getting monoclonal antibodies, which is what they gave Trump. It's the Regeneron's treatment. He was taking Z-Pak as well as ivermectin. Well, all of these outlets immediately came out and started saying that ivermectin was horse dewormer, which is technically the truth, the best kind of the truth. We love technicalities here. I'm kidding, by the way. They were saying that, Joe Rogan takes ivermectin, a horse dewormer. Or they would say Joe Rogan takes horse dewormer ivermectin. Just because an animal can take a medicine that's used across the board doesn't mean that's solely what the medicine is. But more importantly, just because ivermectin is in a specific treatment doesn't mean that every single treatment is the same one. That is to say, these media outlets knowingly published lies or had reckless disregard for the truth when they claimed that Joe Rogan was ingesting horse dewormer. That is to imply that they were saying Joe Rogan went to Tractor Supply and bought horse paste. Well, Joe on his show said, should I sue CNN or do I have to? It was a question, and let's be real. I don't think Joe is seriously saying he will sue CNN. But I want to take this opportunity to seriously say, Joe, yes, please sue all of them. I'm not even kidding. I mean, look, one of the challenges we face today with the media and their lies over and over, lie, is that regular people don't have the time, energy, resources to actually go up against these companies. Joe is one of the few people who has substantial resources. Now, I know. Perhaps it's just a waste of time in the long run. And maybe, I'm not going to fault Joe for not suing them. I don't know. Ultimately, it's like, it'd be great if he did. But imagine being able to just write a check to a lawyer and be like, take care of it. I know it's not that simple, but for a lot of regular people seeing the smears, and not even necessarily regular people, but there's a lot of people who are in media who don't have nearly the opportunity and the resources to do something like this. I get it. Joe's a busy guy. I'm not going to pretend like he's not, his time is not consumed. But there is still an advantage he has that many others don't. And so long as people don't sue for reckless disregard for the truth, these companies will keep publishing the garbage lies over and over again. Now, I saw this story and I wondered to myself, when did CNN say that Joe Rogan was taking horse dewormer? And it turns out it was a personality on Don Lemon's show. So here's the challenge. I don't know if you can actually sue CNN for that. You might have to sue the person himself because you can go on a show and you're responsible. I mean, I guess there's tons of technicalities and legal arguments. So theoretically, Joe, you can sue a ham sandwich. Doesn't mean you're going to win, right? But I think Joe should. This doctor, and I have the articles from the Wrap. This doctor claimed that everything that Joe did was wrong, and this is the big problem with these lunatics. All right, with these liars in media. Let me point out a few things. We mentioned this the other day on the show, but I want to say a few things so you understand how important it is that we be honest about ivermectin, among any other medical treatment. CNN has a doctor come on their show saying, monoclonal antibodies, that's wrong, Joe Rogan. You're not supposed to get that. That's for certain other people. Z-Pak, that's not antiviral. That's an antibiotic. That won't work. Hydroxychloroquine, that's not going to work. Ivermectin, that's not going to work. Get vaccinated. The problem is, whatever Joe did, he's COVID negative. So who is this guy to come out and say everything Joe did was wrong? Now, I'll be completely honest. I think the monoclonal antibodies, which is authorized by the FDA, is likely what helped Joe recover very, very quickly. I can't speak for the other medications, but they're all there. There's a few things you need to understand. One, Joe has come out and said these were prescribed by a doctor, and he had talked to multiple doctors who had given him this prescription. I'm not going to come out and tell you to do anything. I don't know. Go to your doctor. Now, isn't it funny? How many people say to me, they're like, Tim, doctors don't know. Certainly Joe had doctors. Would you agree or disagree with them? I'm not a medical expert. I can tell you this, though. The danger of CNN and what YouTube allows and blocks. This is what's shocking. 99% of people suffering river blindness are in poor African communities. And they need ivermectin for the parasites that they get when there's flies that bite you and then they get infected with it's disgusting. It's insane. They lay their baby. Oh man, parasites. Ugh. Well, the World Health Organization says ivermectin is an essential drug in treating this. What do you think's going to happen with the media coming out across the board slamming ivermectin falsely? You now have poor rural communities in Africa. And these people they may be uneducated, but they're not stupid. There's a difference. They may have a lack of access to knowledge, but they're not stupid. They will be discerning. They will be untrustworthy. And if they see this information or rumors spread, what happens when they start saying, why are the UN people coming and giving us horse medicine? What's happening? All of the media is saying it's horse medicine. And then what are we supposed to do? The problem is when a doctor prescribes something, and CNN comes out and says it's dangerous, or these other outlets say it's horse dewormer, or these fake news stories appear saying it's causing blindness itself. No joke. The Oklahoma hoax. We had Zed Jelani on the show last night, a real journalist, by the way. And he was like, when we heard the story that there was rural Oklahoma hospitals overrun with gunshot victims because people were eating horse paste, taking up beds, he is like, I'm going to call them and ask them what's going on. Fake news. Across the board, fake news. But think about this. When you have this story come out saying this guy was like, the worst I saw was a guy who was losing his vision. Now you have river blindness. What happens if these people start getting wind of these stories in the American press, which they can? I mean, there's a lot of people in Kenya. Kenya has the iHub. I don't know if iHub's still there. I haven't checked it out, but they have a big technological center. They're going to be spreading this information around, and they're going to say, look, this thing they're trying to give you, it actually makes people blind. It doesn't, by the way. It's an essential drug, says the World Health Organization. It is not authorized for treating COVID. So I can't speak to the doctors who prescribed it to Joe Rogan. That's between him and his doctors. But the media lies are causing serious problems and distrust. What I can say is the CDC and the FDA say there's not sufficient evidence yet that this is working. And people come back to me and they say, Tim, there's 63 studies and meta-analysis of all these other studies. And I'm like, first of all, I am not a researcher in this capacity. Second of all, I've read studies contradicting these claims, and it seems like either you can believe there's a grand conspiracy or the data isn't sufficient. Now, Joe Rogan on his show, this is important, said that one of the reasons people think ivermectin is not getting approved by the FDA is that it would screw with the emergency use authorization of the vaccines. This idea is easily debunked in two ways. One, the Pfizer vaccine community specifically is FDA approved. There is now an FDA approved treatment, which would negate other EUAs? Not necessarily. Just because something gets approved doesn't mean you lose the emergency use authorization immediately. We don't know. I don't know exactly how that would play out. Also, people have mentioned that Community isn't actually available as a branded label and it's legally distinct. I don't know what that means necessarily, so I can't really tell you, but I can say this. If there was sufficient evidence that ivermectin did work, the FDA need only give it an emergency use authorization. That's it. That would not be full approval. Monoclonal antibodies has emergency use authorization. It does not negate the EUA for the vaccines. So this idea that's the only reason they're not doing it doesn't make sense. Now, I suppose you can come back and say profit motive. Ivermectin is cheap. Perhaps. Then you're just getting into speculation. And while I'm not a big fan of big pharma and massive multinational corporations, and I sympathize with the idea they're just trying to exploit the American people, you'd then have to say that there's you get really into the nitty gritty of the revolving door policies of government. And then I'm like, we're starting to make a lot of assumptions here. Is it possible that the data is insufficient? And what that means is if a doctor does, if there's a big push to prescribe something that doesn't necessarily work or we don't know it works, could that then stop people from taking things that do work? Maybe monoclonal antibodies? Look, I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. There's so much conflicting data. That's why I typically, people are like, Tim, you're wrong about this, you're wrong about that. I'm like, yep, you're right, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about everything. I'm not a doctor. I don't know. All I am is a media person who parses through the lies and the fake news. So that's why I'm skeptical of everything. I'm not going to believe, one person because I know the other person's a liar. Two guys walk up to me. One guy says, free pizza. The other guy says, it's not free pizza. I'm going to be like, well, this guy's lying to me. It doesn't mean I just trust the other guy. There's other things to consider. So far be it for me to tell you. I'll tell you this. Joe Rogan says doctors prescribed it, and whether you like it or not, right? It wasn't horse dewormer. So here's the story. I mean, the gist of the story is very, very simple. Rogan said, bro, do I have to sue CNN? After a guest jokingly called him old horseworm Rogan. So we get the story, but let me give you the context, right? That's about it. Joe, you should, okay? Check this out. From The Wrap, CNN medical analyst debunks Joe Rogan's crazy home COVID treatments. He's promoting kind of a crazy jumble, Dr. Jonathan Reiner said of the podcast host. Now, this I find fascinating. He's promoting it, or is he telling the truth? The question, I suppose, is, did Joe Rogan go to doctors demanding this medication? Or did Joe Rogan go to these doctors and say, what should we do? And the doctors recommended certain medications. So is Joe promoting it by simply saying his doctors prescribed it? You see the problem. They say I'll tell you, what really frustrates me. CNN medical analyst debunks Joe Rogan's home COVID treatments. What? He got prescribed this stuff. He went to a Walgreens or whatever to pick it up. How is that debunking anything? Joe, sue these people. CNN and The Wrap. Look at this. From The Wrap, Joe Rogan reveals he has COVID, and yes, he's taking horse medicine ivermectin. That is a false statement of fact. There is horse medicine ivermectin, and there is human medicine ivermectin. And that's between Joe and his doctor. As I stated, the FDA has warned against this. The CDC explicitly says not to prescribe this. If doctors are, well, then I don't know what to tell you. Doctors are going to prescribe what they want to prescribe, I guess, whether you like it or not. CDC says not to. But Joe Rogan did not take horse medicine. They said he did. Okay. Horse medicine is different from human medicine. As I've pointed out and begrudgingly have to clarify in every circumstance because we are getting into the nitty gritty here, the FDA's warning on ivermectin is that the formulation for horses is not the same as the formulation for humans, as easily proven by the fact that it comes in a tube of paste, which is flavored like apples, and human ivermectin comes as little tablets you get from a pharmacy. They're clearly not the same formulation. They may both have the active ingredient ivermectin, but the issue is the animal stuff is not human grade. And more importantly, you should probably get a prescription for whatever medication you're going to be taking. There's some over-the-counter stuff. Clearly, ivermectin is not over-the-counter for humans. There's just differences. We don't give dogs grapes. And I'll do this correction actually for you. I kept saying dog medicine ibuprofen. Well, it is true you can give dogs a small dose of ibuprofen, very small. Many people have said, Tim, it's toxic to give dogs ibuprofen. It's easy to give dogs too much. So for the most part, I read that they typically would do aspirin. Okay, point taken. We don't go around saying that people are going to bodegas in New York and requesting dog medicine for their pain. It's aspirin. People take aspirin. It's not dog medicine. Now, what would happen are we going to play that game where I see, some celebrity taking an aspirin and I say, celebrity A was witnessed ingesting dog medicine on the streets. Boy, has she fallen. You think you're going to get away with that? You think a judge is going to be like, well, it is the truth. Yeah, nice try. They're going to be like, okay, clearly that was just a regular bottle of aspirin and not dog medicine. Joe Rogan clearly went to the doctor for a prescription. Sue them all. Here's what the guy at CNN said. He said, quote, this is the Dr. Reiner. He said he received monoclonal antibodies. It's really not indicated for him. It's indicated for people with mild to moderate symptoms at high risk of progression. It doesn't seem like that's him, Reiner continued. He said he took steroids, prednisone. That's only indicated for hospitalized patients on oxygen therapy. And finally, he said he took azithromycin, an antibiotic, which doesn't work for viral illnesses. We know that. After picking apart why Rogan's choices were likely ineffective, Reiner then went on to slam the podcast host for the danger he's putting other people in by advocating for the unproven treatments. He's promoting kind of a crazy jumble of, sort of folk remedies and internet prescribed drugs. It's, again, dangerous now. He should have more sense after encountering the disease. And again, I hope he does well and gets well quickly. He's not helping matters when he promotes this sort of nonsense therapeutic mix. Promoting it? Guys, it's entirely possible none of these things did anything for Joe Rogan. And that's the reality. Joe is an extremely fit man. Oh, I believe is 52. I don't know his exact age. And it's possible that Joe is just healthy. You guys see that viral story where it's like healthy 16-year-old with COVID and the kid was 300 pounds? Yeah, that's not healthy. Joe is healthy. Now, once you're over 40, you have a much higher risk factor for COVID. This is true. Some people apparently are asymptomatic and they're fine. Some people get smacked like a Mack truck when they get this stuff. We've had people on the podcast, young people, who are like, it was brutal and it was like a seriously bad illness. And I'm like, okay, I get it. Joe may just be a healthy guy. And so he got medications, but he probably eats right. I mean, I think we know he eats right because we see him posting his video of his steaks and things like that. He exercises quite a bit and he's a fit guy. So I think he probably would have done fine regardless. But considering age is a factor in COVID risk, maybe he wanted to be safe. It's entirely possible that out of all of this, Joe just healed. The problem now is, in the desperation to debunk a doctor's prescription, you end up with a story that debunks the narrative from CNN. If they want to come out and tell people not to do this stuff, you need to be honest about it and give people real reasons and explain to them what the FDA and CDC is actually saying and what the science actually says. Then you need to ask specific questions and then defer to others to make the choices they think make sense for them. When you come out immediately and say it's horse dewormer and Joe's crazy and then Joe gets better, congratulations, you debunked yourself. Debunked yourself. So what I say is always find a trusted doctor. Don't take it from me. But let me tell you what they're doing. This viral tweet, 4,194 retweets. I think it actually has more than that, 4,000 quote tweets. TJ Ekman says, ivermectin apparently sterilizes the majority of men that take it. Why isn't Twitter flagging this one? Ivermectin, according to the study, has some people who are prescribed it ended up with lower sperm counts. Yeah, it was 385 people in one area. We don't know exactly. It's probably spurious correlation, but it's one microscopic study, and it's poorly done, to put it mildly. Now, I'll take it for what it's worth, but I'll say this. One study of 385 people does not a good science make. Truth is far from here. With ivermectin, there are many, many, many studies. There's a lot of data coming out of a lot of countries. However, as I've talked to many people about this, I've pointed out there are contradictory studies. And I sat down and I pulled them up and I'm like, hey, this one says this is not true. This one's saying in this randomized, oh, those studies are no good. I'm like, but here's like 50 studies saying they found no conclusive evidence. You see, the risk I see there is telling people to take a medication that might do nothing could convince them to not do things that might actually help them. In the case of Joe Rogan, monoclonal antibodies seems to work. So it's good that he took it. Throwing the kitchen sink at it? Okay. I guess the idea they're saying is that, well, it's fine to prescribe it because it's not going to cause very serious effects or whatever if prescribed in low doses or something, so who cares anyway? And I'm like, well, I understand this fear. One, that people will eat a tube of horse paste because people are dumb. But what are you going to do about that? Are we really becoming a nation of putting warning labels on literally everything? I guess so. Warning, caution, coffee hot. I mean, that story is something else. But yeah, the coffee was hot. It was boiling. The McDonald's coffee, you know that story? Are we going to put labels on seatbelts? Are we going to mandate safety for every single person? People should not be eating horse paste. But there are dumb people. So it's simple. We simply say ivermectin is a World Health Organization essential drug for treating parasites and river blindness, not approved by the FDA or authorized for use in treating COVID because they feel the data is insufficient. There is some promising data, but it's not so far conclusive. Oxford has a study right now, and they've found promising results that may ultimately result in something positive. I don't know what else to tell you other than as much as I can distrust the mainstream media, as much as I can distrust the hyper-partisans, I can tell you this. If you go to the CDC website, and I have numerous times, and I've pulled it up, they're not making things up, okay? I mean, look, I'll put it this way. Maybe, I don't know. But look, people talk about adverse reactions. It's literally on the Pfizer vaccine label. The CDC and the FDA are not hiding that from you. It's the media that's lying. So when I go, and again, not a big fan of government institutions just blindly trusting them. But I don't know what you do if, like, who do you choose to trust and what do you choose to trust? I'm not going to just blindly trust random people on the internet. So I put it this way. I go to the media and I see all this garbage and all these lies. I go to the CDC website and what do I see? here's a list of adverse reactions. Here's a list of counterindications. Here's a list of ingredients. And I'm like, okay, well, all right. What am I supposed to say? It's like if you have allergies, be careful. If you're allergic to glycol and certain things like that, they tell you outright. Now, there is some contradictory information where, like, I think the FDA saying that the vaccine is considered safe for pregnant women. But when you look at the Pfizer FDA approval insert, it says there's not sufficient data to make conclusions about the risk. So there is some nuance there in that some people are concerned. The FDA saying it's safe is premature. What they're actually saying, if you dig into it, is there's not sufficient data to indicate any risks. So they're operating under the assumption that it's fine because in animal trials, they've not seen any negative effects. But we don't have long-term studies on humans because, well, it is a new thing. Ultimately, it comes down to this. The media lies all the time. Because they do, it breeds this distrust. And people then, hearing confirmation bias, will choose to trust those who are telling them what they know to be true. And I get it. If someone comes out and says, hey, look, Donald Trump didn't do that, the media's lying. People will be like, okay, I know they're lying because I watched a video of Trump. This person told me the truth. I'm going to trust them. But this person then comes out and says something off topic or irrelevant, talking about some kind of medicine. And people say, well, they were right about that one other thing. I choose to trust them. It's still the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. Interestingly, there's an inversion of it. If you're not familiar, the Gell-Mann amnesia effect is basically you open up your newspaper, and it says a story like Donald Trump throws food into pond in humiliating, mockery of Japanese culture. And then you're like, wait a minute, that's not true. In the full video, Shinzo Abe of Japan did it first. Trump was just following suit. They're lying. Then you turn the page and it says, Syria airstrikes, children dead. And you're like, wow, that must be true. The Gell-Mann amnesia effect is basically that when you read a news story about something in which you know the truth, you call them out as liars. But then you read a news story from the same outlet and assume it's telling the truth. You see, that's an issue. And I think we're all victim to it. It's hard to know what's true, even from these news outlets. But then there's kind of an inversion to it. Because you've revealed, you've been exposed to the realities of these media outlets, when you do find someone is telling the truth, you turn the page and assume other stories are the truth as well. So this could be described as not an amnesia effect, but I don't know how you describe it. Someone come up with a name for it. You open up a news article and there is something. Donald Trump did not humiliate, or make a mockery of Japanese culture. Shinzo Abe did it first. And you go, yes, I saw that video. Thank you for telling me the truth. Turn the page and then it says something about medication and you go, wow, I didn't know that. Still just trusting it. Now, the issue here is that CNN has news that's true and correct. So does the New York Times. Imagine someone opening up the New York Times and it says, Donald Trump does backflip. And you're like, yeah, I saw the video. Then you turn the page and say, well, that was true. This must be true, too. It's not the case. You've got to fact check. You've got to do your best. And ultimately, it's damn near impossible. Because I ask you to trust timcast.com. And we're not always right, but I have a strict policy on making sure we correct things and issue updates on those and make those corrections, visible and all that stuff. So ultimately, look, the media lies all the time. At the end of the day, the only thing I can say is find a doctor you know and trust. Joe did. Get a prescription from them and follow their instructions because the internet people, we don't got it. The media companies, they don't got it. And I know this stuff trickles down to doctors too because they're human. But you got to find someone you trust to be knowledgeable and having information on this. Some people tell me, Tim, but doctors, they don't know much and they're reading the news too and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you got to find the doctor. Don't tell me that if Joe Rogan can find doctors who prescribe him whatever, that these doctors don't exist, whether they're right or wrong. I'll end by saying this. The CDC does come out and say, do not prescribe ivermectin to treat COVID-19. They're concerned about severe illness and overdoses of ivermectin products, which have increased in 2021. They say the FDA has not authorized or approved ivermectin for prevention or treatments of COVID-19. Clinical trials and observational studies to evaluate the use of ivermectin to treat or prevent COVID-19 have not yielded sufficient evidence to recommend its use, according to the CDC Health Advisory. Before the pandemic, there were 3,600 outpatient retail pharmacy prescriptions for ivermectin per week. From March 16th, 2019 to March 13th, 2020, ivermectin prescriptions reached a peak of 39,000 in the week ending January 8th, after a brief drop. Ivermectin prescriptions reached more than 88,000 for the week ending August 13th, 2021. And they say there's neurological effects, hypertension, and gastrointestinal symptoms, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea for overdose. I mean, overdose is serious, but I'm not going to pretend to have the answers other than to just read, CDC publications. I will say, though, at least we can admit, right? Wouldn't there be an issue if doctors are mass prescribing a placebo effectively, if it's not doing anything and has some risk of side effects? I think that's a fair point, but I'm not going to pretend that ivermectin is horse dewormer. I'm not going to lie to you about it. I'm going to say, take it from a doctor, not from me. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see y'all at 1 p.m. On this channel in the next segment.